And hello, Hearts of Oak. Thanks so much for joining us once again. I'm delighted to have a guest, and we were talking beforehand. I couldn't remember how we connected, and it was when he was guest hosting with the one and only Chanel Ryan on OAN, and I joined him then, and that is Alec Lace. Alec, thank you so much for your time today.
What's doing, Peter? Honored to be here with you.
Great to be, and you're obviously there is your link at Alec Lace. Does what it says in the tin. It's simple. I love it when people's handles just are their name. And he's a father of four, host of First Class Fatherhood, and host of the Alec Lace Show. On Alec, you've had the show since I think 2018. You've interviewed 600 plus high profile individuals talking about fatherhood as dads, what that means, and you're author of the best-selling book First Class Fatherhood, advice and wisdom from high profile dads. And as we were talking before, as Alec has 4 kids, I have 2, so he's got double the experience and wisdom. So I'm looking forward to chatting to him and learning a lot about. But maybe, Alec, I can ask you, maybe what inspired you to actually starting the podcast First Class Fatherhood back 2018, which seems a lifetime ago, but the issues remain the same today as they have always remained for every generation. How you can be a good father, a good role model for your children. But maybe let us know why you started the podcast in the first place.
Well, Peter, I work for the railroad. I'm a railroad mechanic. That's my full-time gig that I've been doing for the last 25 years. And on the side, I always drove a regular taxi, metered taxi. And then when Uber came along, I switched over and started driving Uber. And I was doing that in 2017, 2018. And a lot of the times I would tell people that I had 4 kids, especially young men, I would tell them I had 4 kids. They would look at me like I had 4 heads. And so I would try to tell them.
Alec, let me hold you. Your video's dropped out.
Let me see here.
Let me hold you there.
I had a pop-up came up there.
That's fine. Can I ask?
I'll start with just re-answer the question.
I'll ask the question and then you jump straight in.
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
If I've asked the question, 2 minutes, just jump straight in.
Yep. Peter, I'm a railroad mechanic. That's my full-time gig, and I was doing that. I've been doing that for 25 years. On the side, I've always driven a taxi, and then when Uber and Lyft came along, I jumped onto that. And as I was doing that, mainly on Friday, Saturday nights, a lot of the young men that I would talk to in the Uber, when I would tell them I had 4 kids, they would look at me like I had 4 heads, like that was something that was crazy. They were like, 4 kids, And I would try to tell them, like, it's really not that crazy. It's really not that many, really, even. But they always had this kind of negative attitude towards, or just seeming like something that was out of reach for them. Like they just seemed like, getting married, starting a family, having children seemed like it was something that was way out of range or way down the line for them. And so I kind of wanted to turn that narrative around and be like, no, this is actually, maybe what you should be aiming for. This is something that's going to actually be a positive impact on your life. It's not this doom and gloom that you think it might be. And so the idea was to kind of bring on these people that have really had a lot of success in their life and have, really crushed it in whatever industry it may be. If that's the NFL, the UFC, the military, entrepreneurship, politics, and listen to their testimonies where they say, despite all these amazing accomplishments I've had, it's really been through becoming a father that's given me the most fulfillment in life. And so I think we always follow these people, these influencers or these famous people because of whatever these accolades they have, as we think that's what's going to bring us the joy in life. But what's really bringing them the joy in life, when you get down to it, is their children and being fathers. So that was kind of the stories I wanted to capture with the show. And I had, I started it out, just talking about individual fatherhood topics, and then had Dean Cain, who was actually on the same show, might have been on the same show I had when I was guest hosting with Chanel that you were on. But back then, I didn't know Dean, and I had reached out to him, and I was 47 episodes into the show. and he enjoyed what I was doing. He liked the topic, and so he came on. And when he came on, he promoted it on his Twitter feed and on his socials. And the podcast went to #1 for kids and family on Apple, in the Apple store. So while Strike While the Iron was hot, I started to pick up a lot of really good guests. Like I had Kurt Warner and Deion Sanders. I got Rob O'Neill. I got all these different people right then. And it just kept the momentum going. And the show, it really, it stayed up in the top for a very long time. And I had 750 something guests on the show. So, a lot of wisdom given out, a lot of dads coming from different directions, but I think it's just so important to get that message out there to the young men that this is something you should be striving to do, not something you should be trying to avoid.
Well, you interviewed many legends, and Superman himself you've had. That is interesting, not only because of all his background, but also his strong Christian faith. But I guess discussing fatherhood it's very personal. No one wants to publicly admit that they maybe haven't got it all together. We are all juggling so much in life. It is like being bombarded with so many issues, and our children are bombarded with so many issues, social media being one of them, etc., etc. So how is that engaging with high-profile figures about something that's really maybe very personal, and they're maybe very happy to talk about their politics, their campaigning, their media stuff, but when it talks about something personal like being a father to their children, that's often away from the public spotlight. So what is that like for you, engaging with them on a very personal subject?
Peter, to be honest with you, I think they enjoy it more than they do talking about and I think the reason why I had a success rate of getting like a lot of the high profile people is because they're always, asked all the time to, like, if it's a UFC, like Dana White. How many times is Dana White going to do a UFC interview, about UFC? He's done a million of them. So if you're just another guy that's saying, hey, I want to have you on talk about the UFC, when I asked him to come on and talk about fatherhood, it was like, oh, that's something that he has never been asked to come on and talk about. And it's something that's the most important to him. Same thing with a lot of these other people that I've interviewed. And I think that they really come alive in those interviews because it is personal. And it's not, especially if you're a public figure, a lot of the times you have a facial figure, a face to the public and a face at home. And more of your face at home comes through in these interviews because it's true. Like a politician is usually full of crap. I mean, that's what we know, but when you get them a chance to open up a little bit and start talking about their family, it becomes more personal. And I think that's really, and even, I've done 6 or so Super Bowl media days where I go to the Super Bowl media day event and I talk to the players and coaches, about fatherhood, family, faith. And so people will be asking them, and they ask a lot of crazy questions at these Super Bowl media days. So they'll be getting asked questions about like, oh, what type of defense do you think they're going to play? Or what, and then I come and say, hey, how did becoming a father change your perspective on life? And then they kind of they light up a little bit and their mood changes and they start getting into it more and you can see it on their faces. And so I think, relatively, I've had great feedback from reaching out and response time from people that want to come on the show and talk about being a dad.
How does it, because you've got different people, you've got in the background, I see Charlie Kirk with a very young family. You've got maybe others like Dr. Ben Carson, maybe older, and therefore their kids growing up.
Well, Peter, I don't want to jump in. This background that I have here, this is the Alec Lace show, which is different than First Class Fatherhood, because First Class Fatherhood is only dads. That's it. I only have fathers on that show. I transitioned to the Alec Lace show, which focuses on political issues facing parents, because right around Trump's trying to go back into office there, Joe Biden's, I guess, last year in office, I had switched over because I was getting hammered so much for having conservatives on First Class Fatherhood. I was getting buried because of that. And so I was really fed up with what was going on. Joe Biden had that same type of language that there's no such thing as somebody else's kid. These are all our children. They had that socialist Marxist type of mentality towards words, family, and I had it. So I paused on the First Class Fatherhood and launched into the Alec Lace Show. That's why the people on these are some of the guests that I've had on here. So you'll see women on here as well, and everybody pretty much on here to talk about politics, political issues facing parents. But some of them have crossed, like Ben Carson's been on both shows. He's been on the Fatherhood and he's been on the political.
But because there's no silver bullet to making parenting easy. But I guess you take a lot of principles. You come into this with your experience as a father, but then you engage with other high-profile figures, and you get them to share their thoughts, their experiences on dealing with their public profile, but also the private, being fathers. Share some of those principles that you have taken away with some of those conversations, because you do interviews and you think, well, I really learned that was a great interview. And then there are others that you think, wow, I didn't expect that, or that hit me, or that point is really something I'll go and think about as an individual and how I live my life. So maybe some of those principles that have really hit you.
Yeah, I think, listen, it is crazy to start listening to so many people coming, how they come at fatherhood and hear their stories and stuff. And there's always, and you're right, there is no silver bullet when it comes to parenting. There's no right way to do it. There's no wrong way to do it. There's the way that you do it. I mean, that's really it. Everyone, and so many of us, I think we kind of just make it up as we go along. You know, we try to take a little bit of advice from our family, from our friends, from other parents. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you really are making a lot of it up. You've never done it before. Your kids look to you as if you know what you're doing. And as they get to these different stages, you learn. Like right now, I have a 19, an 18, a 14, and an 11. So my oldest son will be 20. I've never had a 20-year-old son before, so I don't know, so it's always an on-the-job training. It's always an on-the-job learning. But some of the good advice, given out on the show would be like being able to adapt, to your children, being that like, you expect maybe your child is going to be like you, be interested in the things that you are, but you have to adapt to what they like. You have to get into maybe something that you never thought you'd do in your life. I always use the example, my oldest guy got into chess at a very young age. It's a game I never played in my life. I didn't even know how to play it. And I learned how to play it so that I could play it with him. That was something I never saw myself ever doing. But those are like some of the different things you have to adapt to. You have to change. You also have to adapt your lifestyle. Your schedule will change. You got to learn to be able to handle that and say, you know what? Maybe you're getting ready to run out the door. You're late for church, or you're late for whatever it is, and now all of a sudden you got to change the diaper. And you can't. Well, that's one of the things too. Would be like. Calm is contagious. Like, if you start to fly off the handle and lose it, oh my God, we're going to be late, then your wife will panic, and then it starts to make it worse. So like calm can be contagious in those situations. Also too, like being able to bend the rules as the kids get older, like, because you're strict on the rules, but you have to be able to bend, not break, with a lot of times with the kids. Like, let them come up with some suggestions. No one likes to be told no all the time. So allow them to come back at you and start to be able to bend the rules a little bit if they make a good argument. Just trying to instill in them good values, work ethic. So some of my kids, school ain't for them, but the work ethic is there, and I think you have to have one of those two. You either have to be real studious or very hardworking, and then studious that leads to hard work. There's so many different layers that go into it once you get to driving, dating, all these different things that start to come up along the way. You need to learn to adapt, and you need to learn to be ready, because just like you're still growing. The kids are always growing. It's the most fun thing in life, because it makes you better. It makes you want to be more better. It makes you want to be more disciplined. It makes you want to learn and grow and develop and change. And the whole process is fun. It's what life's all about. Everything else that you try to do during life is really to try to build up your resume, and you focus. There's this controversy, this comparison I usually like to do between the resume and your eulogy, right? Because on your resume, all these things are going to go on there, these accolades you've accomplished, these great things you put on there, that what you've done, and your jobs and your titles, and then on your eulogy, it's a completely different piece of paper that's going to be written about you, and on that paper, it's going to be who you were as a father, how you treated other people, how other people felt when they were around you. Those are the things that are going to be said about you. And I remember Dana White saying, when it's all said and done, a lot of people asked him about his legacy and what his legacy is going to be. And he said, at the end of the day, when I'm laying there in that box and my children get up there to speak about me, what they say is the only true legacy that's really going to ever matter, and that's really when it comes down to it. And we all know that, we play these different roles in the world. We're on TV or we're experts in this field or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, we know in our hearts the true thing that matters is our family and our children and how we are as dads.
It is. And you mentioned getting out to church. That's sometimes one of the most stressful parts of the week, actually getting everyone into the car, out to church. You've got that image and it can be chaotic behind the scenes. And I guess that's an example of you kind of have a front, an image, but behind the scenes, it can all be fairly chaotic in making that happen. And that often doesn't come out. I wonder, does that come out in some of the conversations you have?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because we all go through that. We all experience the same thing, even though we try to pretend that we don't when we're out there, as if we got it all together. And I think it's important. And it's why one of the reasons, it's different now. Like I said, my kids are older, but when you're a young parent, especially, you're constantly questioning yourself. Am I being a good dad? Am I doing this right? And you kind of, that reassurance is so important. I remember one time that I was at a restaurant and my wife were there. I think we had 3 of them at the time and they were very young, probably all 3 were under 5. And, doing at the restaurant and you feel like you don't want to interrupt everybody else's meal. You're conscious of what's going on. You don't want the kids throwing stuff around. You want to make sure you're doing it right. And you're constantly looking to see are we, too much, trouble in this place. And I remember one time an older couple had came over as we were at the table and they were on their way out, they were an elderly couple. And the guy stopped and said, "Hey, just want to let you guys know you're doing a great job. Kids are really well behaved." And what that did for me at the time was I felt like I was on top of the world to get a compliment like that from an older gentleman. Like I was like, it felt so good and reassuring. And I've always made sure that going forward, when I see young couples in the restaurant or online at the store or wherever it may be, I always do that for them because I know how great that feels, especially as a young parent, to hear, hey, you're doing a good job. The kids are well behaved. It's okay. And sometimes that can be reassuring because, yes, it does get chaotic when you're trying to, rustle everybody together to get out the door. People got to take showers. Clothes are all over the place. Somebody didn't eat. Something spills. There's always something going on to try to get out there. And it creates those moments that you don't really enjoy because in them, a lot of times you're in such a rush. And so you got to try to slow down a little bit and say, especially like when you have young kids and they make a mess, they get into the sugar on a flour and they mess it all over. Your instinct is to be, upset. We got to clean this up, but take a picture of it. Realize that it's just in a moment that's going to pass, and those are the ones you'll cherish when you get a chance to look back at them.
Like one of those moments is when the child decides it needs to poo just before you leave the house.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Gosh, we have to get to church. You need to poo. Okay, how do you put those together?
Yeah.
How does faith come in? Because the Bible is the best guidebook for us on how life works. And a lot of the issues we have is because we don't go back to basics and look, actually, what do the Psalms, what do the Proverbs say about this? What do we learn from the life of Christ? And it's packed full. How does that come across? Because I guess not all your guests are Christians, but many people who are not Christians still understand the value of the principles in the Bible. How does that come out at all in your conversations?
All the time. Yeah, I say Proverbs 22:6 is probably the most important one there, where it says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he gets old, he'll never depart from it." But yeah, faith is something that's different for everybody. I've had Muslim dads on the show, Jewish dads on the show, all different faiths. But like you said, the faith component of it is important, and sometimes too, going to church with your family. For the faith, yes. For the religious aspect of it, yes. But also, too, for the family moment. It's a chance for your family to be together, organized once a week for 1 hour. I mean, I'm a Catholic, so that's the way it is for us. I know people have different ways that they do it. But it gives you a sense of community. It gives you a sense of, hey, this is what we're doing together. No matter what our busy lives are going on, you've got practice, you've got the study for this, you've got work. Hey, Sunday, what mass are we going to? And we're all going to try to go. Now, it doesn't always happen as they get older now, but when they're younger and you have more control over their schedule, I think it's so important to spend that time together as a family, and a lot of times, maybe they're not listening to the sermons or to the homilies or nothing like that, but they're there. They're in the environment. You're with them. And I think it's a great thing to just the structure of the family to have that early on with the kids. And then my kids all became altar servers, and they all do that. So they're a part of the church and stuff. And faith is something else too, Peter, that you can't push it on them either. I mean, it's you can introduce them to it, and eventually it's going to be up to them whether or not they want to take it or not. It's the same thing with like sports. Like maybe you played football as a kid and you want your kid to play football. You can't make them play football. You can lead them to football. You can introduce them to it, but you can't force it on them. And I think that's kind of the same way that it is with faith. Like you could bring them to the church, introduce them to the faith, read the Bible with them, and go over the stuff. But ultimately in their life, they're going to make the choice. And I think maybe they stick with it right away, or maybe it takes them some failures and some trials and some tribulations and they come back around to it later. It comes to people in different ways at different times for different reasons, and you don't really have control over that. But I think introducing it to them at a young age is very important. And also, it's great for the family, just as a family event to do once a week, no matter what the faith may be. Praying together, the old saying, right? Family that prays together stays together. So I think I think it's very, very important to family development.
No, I agree. And I was at my 10-year-old's choir service at the Anglican Church, which is Mass, High Anglican, over into Catholic. So all mixes up there on that level. But it introduces conversations, I think. And you talk to the children coming back or going there, why and what does that mean? What did you sing? And I think it's not just the event, you're right, not just the church event. It's actually the conversations around it that you bring up queries about how life works. I think that's really important.
It is, especially too, like usually on Sunday we go to the church, and then after church we go to the diner, and so we all have breakfast or brunch together, and then we get a chance to react to some of the stuff that happened in church, and it helps you too. It depends on if you're engaged in your faith as well, or so if you're somebody that like me myself, I'm constantly reading the Bible, I'm constantly studying it. I have a Strong's concordance which I value very much and use thoroughly. So I'm constantly trying to learn too, and so I have children that I can really get into now, deep conversations about theology with, and others still kind of on the periphery that we talk basic about it. So it all depends on where they are. But I think the most important thing is that you yourself are continuing to learn and in the faith and continuing to grow and ask questions. And sometimes kids come at it from a different angle. They see things differently, just like everybody does. But your children might have a different viewpoint. Then it opens up a topic, a whole different and then you end up in a whole different direction. So yeah, you're right. I think the fact that it will bring up those conversations, is crucial.
Your book, First Class Fatherhood, you cover a range of topics and experience and voices, father voices from all of the people you've connected with. You talk about maybe finance, but self-care. I mean, there's such a wide range. Do you get is there like a common challenge you get from your guests on issues they put their finger on? Because again, a lot of these, the issue in finance or even self-care for dad, that normally doesn't come into it because you're just running on the treadmill trying to make things work. And normally you don't sit and kind of think through some of these. And I think your book does that, and that draws from your experience with talking to many. But are there kind of some common challenges that you engage with guests on what they face?
I think, like you brought up finances, that's one challenge. And usually I bring on guys that are good with money when I do that, right? I'll bring on these entrepreneurs that have really crushed it, or I'll bring on some people that are even teaching financial literacy, stuff like that. But yeah, finances is definitely one, especially because you'll hear that a lot from one of the reasons I would get from young men why they don't want to have kids is because I can't afford it. That's the most common one that you'll hear is, oh, I can't afford to have kids. Whereas I think when you have kids, it actually motivates you to make more money than you've ever had in your life because it gives you an extra drive that was never there before. It gives you that sense of purpose that was never there before. Now it's like, I have to. It's almost like the bridges are burned behind you. I have to move forward here. And so it gives you that extra drive. But finances is definitely one. Fitness and health is definitely another. Friendships and social life is definitely another one. So these are things that people struggle with, especially early on when it comes to being a dad. So I bring on different people that are experts, or not experts, but are known for those fields. And motivational speakers, guys that have, I bring on dads that have gone through either separation or they married into a family that has another child, so you have blended families. So you get to hear how that works because that's a challenge for a lot of people when they start that out. They come in, what do you call it, like a bonus child. So they meet a girl that already has a kid, or maybe you have a kid and you have a kid together. So you have people that have been through that and have found some success with that because that creates different challenges. So everybody kind of has, different areas of challenges. So what finances may be challenging for one, it may not be a problem for another. Social life could be a problem for one, it may not be for others. But I think the best thing is a lot of times dads may not want to talk about this stuff. So like they'll be at the job and they don't get deep into what's actually going on, what they are struggling with. They'd rather not talk about what they're struggling with. They'd rather have the face that they got it all together. And so they'll listen in on a conversation where somebody has the same struggle that they're having. And that's where I think they could find the help. Like when I first started doing it, Peter, there may have been like 4 other podcasts that were dedicated to fatherhood, and there was about 300 dedicated to motherhood. So moms have those outlets. Moms and women, they're more than willing to talk about their children, their husbands, their families, and they get all that out. Dads, not so much. And so I think it's beneficial for dads to get a chance to listen in and see how other people are handling. And also too, sometimes it helps to know that you're not the only one. Like you're not the only guy that comes home from work, goes in the bathroom to hide out, try to get 10 minutes to himself. Like this is something that other people are doing too. So I think that's always reassuring too, for other young men, especially, the young dads to get some of that reinforcement that other people are going through it.
And you mentioned that the struggle, and you mentioned friendship, and you look at friendship, you look at loneliness, you look then on the other side of that, the sad side is suicide, and that's a huge issue here in the UK. I think suicide is the biggest killer of men aged between, it's like 20 and 35, or there's some age bracket, and it's something that's not talked about. And you mentioned about women having many podcasts, and here in the UK we've got a government minister for women and girls. No conversation about having a government representative for fathers, for young boys, for the issues they face. And it seems to be, this is something that's completely missing in our conversation. We kind of say, well, women and girls, they struggle. Men and boys, all good. There are no issues. And yet the suicide rates show there is something deeper. Tell us about how you see that and how that fits in the conversation, and maybe the lack of conversation on this.
Yeah, and I think this more transitions into what I talk about a lot of times on the Alec Lace show, because now we start to get into some of the social problems that we're seeing with this. And a big part of this too, Peter, is that the role of the man and the role of the father has been looked down upon in a sense, where it's what we were expected to be was the breadwinner, right? We were supposed to be the one to take care of our family while the wife stays home with the children, takes care of the house, takes care of the family. You go out there and you make the money and you bring it back and you have that role. Now they've kind of taken that role away. You're not expected to, that's almost kind of looked at as you're looked at as a bad person if you believe that now. If you want your wife to stay at home, you're a chauvinist, or you're a, what do they call it? A misogynist, or you're some kind of, so that feminism movement that came along has really crushed a lot of men's souls, because if you're not doing what you were engineered to do, which is to be the provider and to be a protector for your family, what purpose do you have? So I think a lot of men lose the sense of purpose, and I think that's why you see that suicide rate may be going up. But I mean, yeah, that's an epidemic here as well too. But I think that's part of it. I think that men are just looked at, in such a negative light. And many men struggle with it. I think we've lost our way. We've lost our role, especially in the workforce. There's no more like where, men used to dominate the workforce. Now they don't. Everything that they want to do, they're criticized for. They're, called all kinds of names. And I think it's really tragic what's happening. I think that's why you see so much of it spike up there. I think what do they call it? The toxic masculinity, they say, if you want to be. And this is why I think, Peter, it's given way to people like an Andrew Tate, people like that, because and people are like, oh, why did Andrew Tate blow up? It's because you've been telling boys and men that they shouldn't be boys and men for so long that finally someone comes along and he's saying things that they want to hear. They say, oh, well, I kind of like that because it appeals to that man inside of them that wants to come out that they're afraid to show in society. Like there's been so many things that have been, emasculating to men that are out there. So I think it gives the rise to voices like that could go to the extreme, So I don't think it's been good. I think especially when you look at our industry, the film industry, our movie industry, they always portray dad as the idiot, the slob, the guy who can never get it together. The woman is always the hero of the story now. She's the one that ends up fist fighting the villain and being the hero of the day. So I think dads have been looked down upon so much in their roles in society, and every time that they want to speak up or speak out, they're getting shouted down. And so I think that's a big part of the problem.
And you got big issue with fatherlessness, a big issue with I guess crime, gangs, having that sense of belonging, the issue of porn, and then how boys look at women. And like you think, well, it was different in our day, and now they see women as very, very different because of how technology pushed them forward. And there are many different conversations, I think, now that we need to have that wouldn't have needed to be there a generation ago. I mean, how do you see that? I mean, to me, the huge issue in gangs, that sense of belonging that I guess the church, the family unit being broken up, that doesn't provide that structure anymore. So boys especially are looking for that sense of identity. And then how they treat women, that's a huge problem in society. And no politician wants to address these, Alec. No politician. And the church is kind of confused because it doesn't know what its role is any longer because it had to step back. How do you see all those issues in terms of the chaos of fatherhood and then children growing up in this confusion?
Well, I think, for number one, I think the fatherless crisis that we have is the number one social issue that we're facing in the United States. I mean, we lead the world in fatherless homes. It's an epidemic here that very few people want to even talk about. And one of the things I will say right from the jump on that is the family court system, whereas, women want everything to be equal. But when it comes to family court, they don't want it to be so equal because the family court system is not equal. And there's so many men that have lost financially. They've been humiliated just trying to get a piece of custody with their kid. And it has destroyed so many lives. The child support system that you have in the United States here, the government benefits on that from a dollar-to-dollar basis. The family court system is a billion-dollar industry in this country. And their only role their only role of existence is to keep families apart. Now, it's not to keep families together. They benefit by families being apart, and it's got to be completely revamped. So that part of it creates a lot of your fatherlessness right there too. But also, it leads to every single category that you talk about. You talk about suicide, youth suicide. I think that I don't know the exact percentage, but it's on the higher percentage of youths that commit suicide are fatherless. I mean, when you talk about pregnancy, youth pregnancy, all of these statistics, Peter, every one of them, they all correlate to not having a father in the home and not having a family structure that's together. So when you have a broken family, you got broken people. And we are filling up our prison systems in this country with fatherless young men. And if they don't find that father figure, if they don't have their father in their life, and they don't find it in a coach, or they don't find it in a teacher, or they don't find it maybe in the military. They're going to find it in the street. And when they do that, it's what leads to these disasters. And you see it. I mean, it's an epidemic here, and it's something that needs to be focused on, because unless we, restore the nuclear family unit, unless we get dads back in the home, the Heavenly Father back into their lives, then all of these political conversations that we're having, all these things we're trying to do are never going to accomplish anything, because at the core of it all is going to be the family. If you don't have your family intact and tight and strong, nothing else is going to stand.
We see all those issues that you mentioned in the UK. It's interesting how we're separated by a large body of water, and yet the issues we face in our society and culturally are really mirrored images of each other. Can I ask you about the success of the podcast? You mentioned that at the beginning with the many different guests. You've won awards, got a huge following. And we all have to take an assessment of success or failure. And we all have those metrics that we say, well, are we actually moving towards something, or are we being successful in whatever that means? How do you look at what you're doing in terms of kind of making a dent in that false narrative on fatherhood?
I think the success that I feel comes through the emails and the responses that I get from the people who listen to the shows. I think that's where it feels like I'm doing something right. When I get these long emails, some dads will write emails pouring their hearts out after listening to a show, and a lot of it, the main one that I do get is the one of the dad that went through the divorce court and is trying to get back in their child's lives. They're heartbreaking to read. They look for advice. They want other, and it's those are hard to read. And you again too. It's never a knock on single moms, because the second number one email I get is from single moms that will hey, I raised 2 kids by myself. They didn't go to prison, and it's saying, yeah, well, my grandfather smoked cigarettes till he was 90 and never got sick. Does that mean we should all smoke cigarettes? So it's hard to have those conversations. It's not a knock against single moms, because I know that they're facing their own struggles. But you know what? Not for nothing. There's 100 single mom podcasts you can go listen to. There's 100 people. Go listen to a single mom podcast or other single mothers. I'm talking about the fathers here that are going through this stuff. That's what it's dedicated to. Anyway, those are the I will get ones that, that especially because everyone listens to a different genre. So somebody might be into the UFC, so they listen to conversations I had with like some of the UFC fighters. Somebody might be into Hollywood, so they've listened to some of the Matthew McConaughey or Steve Harvey episodes, they listen to, and that's part of the beauty of it, is that you can look down the list and find somebody, let me see what he has to say. Tony Hawk was somebody that came on a couple times. He's somebody that was in a blended family, right? So he had his own children. His wife has her own children, and they got married. They had the child together. And so he's been in that situation. He gave great advice on how to deal with getting into a situation like that. So I think that no matter which angle you come from, there's something for you to listen to. And I think that just the feedback alone is the success of this show. And again, I right now, I'm a railroad mechanic. That's my main gig. I still do this. I do the podcast and all that stuff on the side. And it's 2 different worlds that I play in, especially, I have a White House press pass. So I go down to the White House briefing, and then I get on the train, I come back, and I go to work, So it's like there's a whole different atmosphere on the railroad than there is in the White House. So I play in both of those fields. But it's fascinating to me. I find it all very fascinating. I learn as I go. I develop little relationships along the way. I network with a lot of people. It benefits, my own children, who at some point, when they become fathers themselves, there'll be this whole treasure trove of information and stuff sitting there for them to go back and take a look at. Let me see what Dad thought about this with, Kurt Warner, or let me see what this guy had to say about, So whatever it may be, there'll be something there for them to listen to and get a chance to go back to. And I think part of that will be a success that I'll get to enjoy later on down the line.
You mentioned that different experiences, White House, and then on the train going home. And I guess you've interviewed many: sports, Hollywood, military, political. There are so many, and yet there is that trait that runs through, that it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant of what you do as a profession. You still are a human being, as a father, trying to look after children. You've got that family. So even though you've interviewed lots of those, I guess, high achievers, those individuals that we see as a success in society, there's probably a similar trait that you see going through that. Is that a fair thought?
A similar trait, you mean, through the guys that I interview?
Yeah, as being a father, irrelevant of their position,
Yeah.
public position, of their success in their workspace, they still are fathers, and that is the same across the board.
100%. And even though I remember, right after one of the Super Bowls, it was when the Kansas City Chiefs lost, and Terrence Mathieu, I forget his name now. He was one of the major players in the game, and I had a chance to interview the players right after the post game, and so. I was waiting. It was a Zoom room, so it was during COVID. It was the COVID year, and so I was like the first. He came on. They just lost the Super Bowl, and so I said, "Hey, you've been on top of this before. You won a Super Bowl. Now you lost. How do you take away this loss? How do you handle that as a father, talking to your son? Like, how are you going to play this as a dad? Like, And he was like, "Well, you got to learn how to win, and you got to learn how to lose." And so it kind of snapped him out of that we just lost the Super Bowl. To, yeah, I am a dad, and how am I going to approach this with my kids and stuff like that? And so it comes back to reality now. Yes, I had this terrible loss, but I'm still a dad, and there's still a job to do here. It's not the end of the world. I still have a job to do here with my kids. And on the other end of that coin, it's the same thing with you win the Super Bowl. Yeah, I'm on top of the mountain now. I got all the glory. I got the trophy. But I'm still a dad here now. I still have this job to do, and it's more important than the fact that I got this accolade now. And I think both of those, no matter your accomplishments, your failures, at the end of the day, you're still a dad, and you're still going to have to be there for your kids. And I think sometimes, too, learning to process and deal with failure could be a lot more valuable than the wins, because everybody can be a great dad and be on top when you're winning, when everything's going your way. I mean, it's easy to do. I know that, like the Navy SEALs, I've had a lot of the Navy SEALs on the show. Like, one of their things, like, yeah, everyone wants to be a Navy SEAL on Friday. It's easy to be a Navy SEAL on Friday when all the work is done. It's like, hey, I'm a Navy SEAL, and I'm out there. It's like, it's easy to be when it's on top and everything's going right. It's great. But when things are going wrong and you're losing, that is the time I think that you can learn the most, and it could be the most valuable. And then you could pull something out of that to show your kids, look, I was resilient here. The world seemed to be going against me. Everything was falling apart, but I stayed the course. I was persistent here. And I was able to get through it. The sun comes up tomorrow. There'll be a better day, but you got to have faith. And I think that also helps with the faith component there too. But I think all the experience you have in life, I think it really, it grooms you for being a better dad. I think you can take all of them and pass them on to your kids and allow your kids to see you work through failures, work through successes. And I think, our actions always speak louder than our words.
Oh, they will. Alec, my final thought, and you talked about children looking at the resources that you've had those conversations. And I'm wondering, thinking back to give advice to a young Alec Lace back before you had your children, what kind of do you take away from a lot that you've learned in terms of your personal side, but also those conversations? What would you like to kind of pass back to a young Alec just before he started on his parenthood journey?
Well, I would say, Peter, for myself, I'm a recovering alcoholic, recovering addict, and I struggle with that for a lot of my life. See, a part of my story goes, at one point, I got a lifetime ban from Giant Stadium, and you fast forward, the NFL's invited me to the Super Bowl to interview the players about fatherhood and family life. So that's the kind of turnaround my life has been personally. So I would say to myself, get that under control earlier. Get that out of the way as soon as possible. It took too long to get to where I was fully sober and clean. I think a lot of dads, I think a lot of young men, listen, not just young men, but young women as well, but particularly young men, struggle with substance abuse. And I think that's it takes so many souls unnecessarily. I think get the help if you're in that type of situation. Don't wait. Get the help as soon as possible and get out of it. You have to get out of that addiction. And then you can't be a great dad if you're drunk all the time. You can't be a great dad if you're high all the time. And so I think that was I would say that to myself. Put it down. You're done. You're a dad now. Put it down. It's only going to lead to disaster. So I think that's one thing that I would definitely say to myself. And the other thing I think, which many new dads is you don't get a chance to stay in the moment and stay present because you're constantly on to the next thing. You're worried about the future. I would say stay more present. Stay present. Enjoy these moments as you have them, and be present. And always make sure that you take care of your wife because your wife is the one that's going to be going through all these physical changes, mental changes, and a lot of times you interview dads, and some dads will feel like a dad on day one. Some dads don't feel like a dad until day 13 or maybe week 13. So it comes in different stages, and that's okay too. You don't expect it to oh my God, it didn't happen to me. Why don't I feel this connection or this fatherhood thing? It'll hit people at different times along the course there too. So be patient with it, but take care of your wife, get your act together, and get ready to go because it's going to be the greatest ride of your life.
I have nothing to add to that, Alec. I really appreciate you giving us your time today. Such fantastic advice and thoughts on many of the interviews you've had, the conversations, and I appreciate you sharing some of that with our audience today. So thank you.
Peter, pleasure to talk to you anytime.